Welcome back to another episode of the Patio Say podcast. As Rob said a couple weeks ago, all you weirdos, don't take that personal. We love you. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here listening to three of us. I'm Anthony. We got Tony. We got Nate. And we are back. Like, let's keep using that, right? We're back.
We're back. Yeah. Again.
Best day of the week.
As always. As always. Oh, sorry.
Like Metallica, we're back. And just one thing I got to notate. I'm a self-proclaimed weirdo. So if anyone's offended out there, I am a weirdo. I admit it. It's all good. No offense.
I might have had a pipe named Weirdo at one point.
Yes, I remember.
Where's Weirdo? Yeah.
Also named after a really amazing song, right?
Yeah. Korashi. Good call. Didn't think of that. Yeah. Good point. We're back. We're doing our thing. We're nerding out again, as we always do. As I always say. As always. Always. As always. Yes. The pod is back. We had a great conversation tonight with Jeremy Saffer, who we met this summer at Tattoo the Earth. He was doing all of the photo shoots for the bands before they went on stage. And we kind of saddled up to him that day. We saddled up to the area he was in, talked to some folks around the show, the festival, all that stuff. And then talked to him at the end of the evening. We're like, hey, man, we'd like to talk to you down the road. And he was all for it. And did he deliver tonight or what?
Yeah, he was amazing. Like, you don't know what you're going to get when you interview people. Although with this one, we did have some dialogue with him, and I don't know if you guys remember, like when we chatted with him for like 2 minutes, he was very present and he was very engaged in the conversation, which is interesting because he did a full day of photography and he was still like dialed in. I think that's an extension of his craft. Like, there's a reason he's Jeremy Saffer,
Oh, well said. Yeah, and also, we were talking like, how many photographers have we had on? And it made me think, especially post, like, everyone, photographer, band, promoter, everyone has a different take, a different story, a different come up. His, in particular, is extremely relatable, not only the fact that we all are from New England, but just little tidbits in this interview that we jump in like, hey, that was us. Hey, we did that. Hey, we were there. And that's always extra special because it's extremely relatable in a time that was very analog and to present day, which is very digital. So great story, great dialogue, and we're going to get into it right now.
All right. We are here with Jeremy Saffer. Jeremy, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We met you this summer at Tattoo the Earth. And I remember the three of us, Anthony and Nate and myself, Tony, were looking to find a place to kind of set up and, it's sort of quiet, but it's not going to be quiet, right? It's a metal festival, but a place where we can find that we could interview some people. And you had a nice space upstairs at the Palladium where you were taking, photographs of all the bands that were coming through. I was like, guys, we got to be close to Jeremy because he's got everybody coming through and might be able to just pull somebody in and say, hey, you want to talk to us for 10 minutes? And that happened a few times. So we appreciate you letting us kind of rub elbows with you in the Palladium that day.
Yeah, of course. No worries. The Palladium's the best. It's my home away from home.
Nice. Yeah. We have a couple of those, and the Palladium's one. I know Anthony's been to a bunch of shows there, but that's a place that we all kind of love. It was a place we drove down to a ton in high school and saw a bunch of shows there, and getting back there to work a festival like that and be, talking to people from bands that are going to play that night or that afternoon was kind of a dream come true for us. So it was cool to be able to see, all of that goes into it. There's the barbershop, and then you're taking photos of everybody, and it looks awesome. That's stuff that we didn't get to see as fans before.
Yeah, there was a good synergy between everyone working that festival and watching everything go down behind the scenes, especially what you do, Jeremy.
Yeah, it was fun. I didn't do many shoots on that one. It was kind of hectic where I was shooting another 3-day festival in Salem that weekend, but I left the Saturday to do Tattoo the Earth and went right back on Sunday. So we just did a couple quick things, nothing too big, but, fun and easy.
So, Jeremy, you're a New England guy, right?
Yeah, Western Massachusetts.
Right on. Yeah, the three of us were all from Southern Maine. Nate abandoned us. He's out in Southern California. But Tony and I, we're still in the Portland, Maine area. So I was thinking, we've been in the same room literally hundreds of times. Like Tony said, we grew up at the Palladium. I don't know. Have you ever been up to like Portland for the State Theater or anything like that?
I just did a shoot within this moment for their album up there, and I know I went up there previously for like Green Day and My Chem stuff like 15, 20 years ago.
Civic Center.
2006 or 7, I think, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but those are the only times I've really been up there. Oh, and for the Slayer DVD, but I think that was in Bangor, maybe.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't go to Maine too often. I tend to stick to, you know, Worcester, Boston, Hartford, Albany, kind of, and sometimes Rhode Island. But lately, everything's going to Boston anyway, so it's me going to Boston all the time now.
I was going to say, that's why we went down there. Stuff didn't come up to Maine, so we were like, shit, got to go down to Worcester. But we love Worcester, so it's great.
Yeah, same.
So, Jeremy, you don't wake up one day and start filming Slayer, photographing Slayer. So take us back. Like, there's one day in your childhood where you were not a photographer, and then there was another day where you were a photographer. So how did that, like, what was your come up with photography?
So it wasn't in photography, it was in music. And actually, spoiler alert, my second photo shoot I ever did, was Slayer. So,
ooh, I jinxed it.
Nice.
Damn.
But that being said, I started as a musician, and I was in bands, I was shooting shows for fun, and I would take pictures of the bands we'd open up for. I would shoot, all the local hardcore shows and whatnot, all the local shows for me. Like every week, every Sunday, there'd be a show that would be, the small shows like Lamb of God, Hatebreed, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, All That Remains, that kind of stuff. And Scott Lee, who runs all the shows, and at the time at Western Mass, had me start shooting for him, shooting all his shows. He worked for a bigger company called Mass Concerts, which does, the Palladium, some shows in Lowell, Warped Tour, all those other things. And then he had me start shooting for Mass Concerts. So essentially, my trajectory was I'm going to Berklee School of Music for music production engineering, and I shoot shows for fun. I love shooting shows. It's what I do for fun. I get into the shows for free. I get to see the bands I like. It's awesome. And then I went to shoot like whoever I could. Didn't matter if I liked them. Like I went and shot Santana, Simon and Garfunkel, anything that Mass Concerts was doing, I would shoot. I went to Berklee. I absolutely hated it. And when I got to that fork in the road of, I've been playing music since I was 9, and I take pictures for fun, I don't know what to do with my life. I went up to Scott and I was like, yeah, man, I don't know what to do. And he was just like, well, what do you want to do? And I was just like, take pictures. And it never dawned on me, but he was like, do that. And I never considered it something other than, I do this for fun. So immediately I left Berklee. I went on tour. I jumped off tour, went to the Hallmark Institute of Photography. So I wasn't shooting on auto the entire time, which I had to, like the first few shows I shot with disposable cameras because tickets, you get them, when you get your concert tickets, it says no professional photography allowed. I didn't know that when you had a photo pass, that means you can bring in a professional camera.
Right.
So I would roll up with cargo pants full of like 5 or 6 of those 27 exposure, disposable cameras. And that's how I shot like Milwaukee Metal Fest, the first Metal Fest I shot at the Palladium. The first bunch of shows I shot were on disposable cameras. And I realized, oh, wait, I have a photo pass. I can bring in a real camera. But essentially, I just dove right into, photography, put down the guitar for a camera, and the camera's been my instrument. And I'm still in the music industry, as you guys know. But that's essentially how it all started. And as soon as I, at Hallmark, I was doing photo shoots of bands at that time. Like I was doing Bleeding Through, Slayer, Static X, a whole bunch of bands while I was still going through it because I was already had that reputation of being a photographer because at the time I'd been shooting shows since I was like 15 years old. So like 4 or 5 years of shooting shows under my belt already had the contacts. As soon as I graduated, I went right back out on tour. And I spent a good 5-6 years as a touring photographer, but I kind of became more of a portrait photographer through everything, and I do way more portraiture and photo shoots than I do concert photography nowadays. But it's kind of, if I'm at a show doing a photo shoot, I'm going to shoot the show too. And sometimes I do show covers, so it's kind of does that a little bit.
But that's cool that you can still do that because that's where you kind of came up, obviously. But you're clearly doing the. Go to Jeremy's website, and it'll be in the show notes. There is some phenomenal set photography there, so it's cool that you're able to do both of that still. us being a music pod, and obviously that's how we met you. What were you listening to growing up that like kind of got you into wanting to be into the music industry in some form or fashion? Like what was your stuff growing up?
Well, I had phases. My first phase was probably New Kids on the Block and Little Mermaid soundtrack. Directly after that, when I was like 9 or 10, it was Metallica. Metallica was my favorite band. They were the world, and anything Metallica adjacent. So like Megadeth, Misfits, Slayer, like that kind of stuff is what I grew up on. New metal hit, and I immediately loved new metal. I liked, White Zombie's not new metal, but like White Zombie, Korn, the first Limp Bizkit album as that came in, I was really into that. And then as I went to Berkeley, I got more and more. Well, even before Berkeley, I got just right into extreme metal. So black metal. As soon as I heard Cradle, I was all about black metal, and that was my life throughout high school and throughout college. Just black metal, power metal, thrash metal, death metal, and that's kind of where I stayed for a very long time, becoming one of those nerdy elitists that's like, you can't like this. That's dumb because it's not black metal. But as the scene I grew up shooting, I loved all those bands too. So it was kind of like, all right, so this is cool, this is cool. And then the metal and hardcore fest kept on happening, and it was just like, cool, it's awesome seeing these two genres of music that generally do battle getting along and coexisting, and then metalcore exists now, and it's like, cool, it's both genres together. So I just exploded into, okay, all my friends are in these bands like Kill Switch, All That Remains, and I shoot them all the time. I like the extreme metal, and so I listen to everything. And it just blew up after high school and throughout college, just listened to all of the metal.
Do you think that was like a product? I mean, we can relate, but I was going to say, do you think it's a product of your environment, considering New England's like such a metal scene, or was there some kind of family member or friend that kind of showed you the way?
So my best friend growing up was this dude, Jeff Brown, who lived in my backyard. There was the corner house and the house right next door. He lived in that house, and he was in a bunch of bands. He was maybe 4 or 5 years older than I was. Yeah, I just grew up going to shows with him. Like he brought me to my first Metallica show. He brought me to my first extreme metal shows of like At the Gates with Napalm Death, to my first Korn show, that kind of stuff. But he got me into all that kind of stuff. But my guitar teacher, Ollie Herbert, who was in All That Remains, he lived down the street from me as well. He got me into a lot of other bands too, and it was more like he got me into like bands like Candlemass and Merciful Fate, whereas Jeff got me into like Metallica, Pantera, Slayer, and then I got into the more extreme stuff, and then I brought that to Ollie. I'm like, hey, Ollie, check out Children of Bodom, check out Cradle of Filth, check out Dimmu. Yeah, it was really cool growing up in that environment where like Ollie would before I worked for Scott as a photographer. When I was much younger, Ollie would bring me to shows and be like, yeah, this is my little brother. I know it's 21 plus, but I'll look after him. So that's how I got to see Merciful Fate way back in the day, and Cannibal Corpse and all that kind of stuff, which was really cool. So growing up on that when I was like 13, 14, 15 was definitely like the foundation of all of that.
One of the things that we love on this podcast is literally seeing that come up. So like you're the, best in the biz in your craft. I mean, you are, but you started with New Kids. You started with disposable cameras. It's encouraging. It's so encouraging because at times this can be a grind, and this is frustrating. You're doing this podcast, but just seeing the roots and seeing the come up is awesome.
Oh yeah, and it's cool. Paris Vizone, another photographer who's incredible and shoots a lot of metal. She used to tour with Limp Bizkit, Newfound Glory, Godsmack. She's New Kids photographer now too, which is kind of cool. Cool seeing like she's a Boston photographer, so seeing like someone else in our scene going out and doing like New Kids is like, that's awesome.
So what would 13-year-old Jeremy think if he could see 20 years into the future, or 25? What would he be? Would he be like, how did this fucking happen?
Oh, he'd be freaking out. But when I was that age, I was like, I wanted to be James Hetfield. That's what I wanted to do. I had the Explorer guitar. I wanted to learn guitar, be a rock star, do all that. And I think I made the right choice in not going that route at all, because I would just be, working Uber and touring when I can kind of thing. But I post about this a lot, and in a lot of shoots I do, it's like, doing the photos for Megadeth like their actual photos, not I did a photo shoot with them. It's I did their photos for them. And it's like, okay, so all these bands I grew up listening to are now the people I work with and talk to on a daily basis. Some of them are my friends. Like, it's unreal. It's insane that, like, you grow up watching them on Headbangers Ball. You grow up watching them on TV, watching their interviews, and then that's the voice calling you on the other side of the phone, like, every now and again for like photo shoot stuff. And it's like, holy shit, I'm talking to the voice I watched on TV and knew from the other room when he came on because I know that voice that well. It's really cool to
That's
have
awesome.
that
That's
name
fucking
pop
awesome.
up on your phone. But it's once you meet them, once you get over like you never really get too starstruck. You're just like, okay, it's another person who's a person. It's really cool that like I grew up on this, and you just got to keep a level head and just be like, all right, another person. And it's insane that it's someone I work with or someone who's a friend, but you know, young me would definitely freak out a bit.
You said a few things that are, again, very relatable. Not only did we all kind of grow up in the same scene and have it come up, but like we were going to shows pre-show. Our stop was like CVS. Got to buy some Sharpies, got to buy some disposable cameras. We're talking like 99, 2000, 2001 era. But also, one of my first albums personally was the Free Willy soundtrack. So there's a lot of interesting parallels there, considering we're like a metal heavy podcast. But
your tastes haven't changed, Nate. Your tastes have not evolved.
Dude, Michael is the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Goat of that genre. But regardless, we kind of have like shoeboxes full of like old photos and stubs and passes and all that shit. But I never looked at, my work. Obviously, like I said, I don't have the niche for it. Looking at disposable photos and whatnot and thinking like, I think I want to do this for a career. Was it like, when was the light bulb effect for you? Like, all right, these photos are something. I think I can do something. I got an eye for this. Was it you or was it someone else that pointed that out?
It was Scott. Like, I was doing it, but it was always for fun. It was something I loved doing. It was something like I thought the photos mattered. But it actually goes back to what you were talking about with Sharpies. I was the kid waiting outside the bus with a stack of vinyl to get signed.
So you're Nate. You are Nate.
I'm a collector. I have several thousand Funko Pops. I have 6,000 DVDs, several thousand vinyl. I'm definitely a hoarder-like collector of things. And I love autographs. I love meeting the bands. That was a big thing to me. And the selfishness of what I do is part of what drove me to it. It was, okay, I'm behind the barricade seeing a band. I see all these people in front of me taking pictures. They're getting a memento from this show that is theirs only. Like, anyone can go get an autograph. Not everybody can get that photo. How do I get that photo? And I learned how to get photo passes. And that was big for me. And then I was like, okay, this is kind of a cool collectible. Imagine like getting your live photo printed out and signed by the band. That's a very unique thing. A lot of photographers do that. Okay, what can I do to take this to the next level? There's 20 people in this photo pit. How many people are doing photo shoots with the band? Maybe one or two on an entire tour. That brings it to the next level, and then it was kind of a collector's mentality and kind of the back of the mind that kind of pushed me toward it even more. Obviously I love the photography, but that was definitely part of it too. That like, even though it's a little kind of a selfish thing, it is something that drove me to it, being a nerdy collector kid and growing up as a collector too.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
We can totally relate to all of that too, because over my left shoulder are 3 photos from Lance Mercer, who took pictures of Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, and my wife got them for me for my birthday because we talked to Lance on this podcast, and like, it's the same thing. Like, how do I talk to that guy? Now we have a relationship, maybe we can buy some prints off him, that type of thing. So we can definitely relate to how do we get to that next step. And sometimes that's, hey, Jeremy's taking pictures of all these people up here. Let's hang out right nearby, and maybe we can talk to a couple of them.
Yeah, it's all about opportunity for sure, and it's all about making your own opportunities and making them happen.
I love that you said like what could separate me from the rest of the pack. You know what I mean? Because growing up, I was at shows where there were more photographers than people attending the show. I mean, like when I started going to shows, it was Rev, Return to the Pit, Rev Aaron, Future Breed, Dan,
Love Dan,
Todd Pollock, Guy of the Storm, all those guys. And it was odd. Like when they were at shows, I was like, this is going to be awesome. Cause like by the time I get home, I'm going to see these. But I think with a lot of those guys, like maybe their focus was just the live show. To have you kind of have that vision of, having the personal photo shoots and stuff like it's like a game theory. You're thinking a few steps ahead. It's like chess.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's what I wanted to do. Shooting shows was always something that I saw as like, I could do this for fun. Essentially, most people who shoot shows, and this is still true today, of 100 people who shoot a show, maybe one person makes money off of it. Mostly it goes online and gets shared online, and nothing comes of it other than, it gets eyes on it, it gets posted on the internet. But in terms of doing photo shoots, I would say out of 100 people doing a photo shoot with a band, 99 of them are getting paid, So it's definitely a different financial move for sure. I'm not in this for the money. If I was broke and not making any money, I'd still be doing this. But it definitely was a change from going from like barely making any money shooting shows to starting to do photo shoots and starting to see like, oh, checks are coming in. That's kind of cool. And then build on that for sure.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Jeremy, kind of riffing off that a little bit, because my mind is just flooding with like memories from back in the day. So it was Sharpies, it was disposable cameras. Seems like we were in the same space, maybe in the same store at the same time. But it was also like Hit Parader and Circus Magazine, and those like live shots and sometimes photo shoots. Was that also an inspiration? Like, oh, I can send these into a publication and get that going.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I wanted to be in magazines. The dream was getting, a magazine cover. I did work for Circus, Hit Parader, Metal Edge, Metal Maniacs, NBWBK. When I first started, I kind of got in all those magazines because I had all these live shots. And if you remember, they used to do those full page posters. You would flip through and then there's a full page live photo.
Do we remember? Come on, Jeremy.
Yeah.
That was our bedroom. That was our bedroom.
We did a whole episode on it, I think, right?
We did. We absolutely
that
did.
was all of our bedrooms. All of our bedrooms were plastered in photos. And
the ceiling,
let me tell you how insane it is seeing like kids now with their walls covered in photos, and those are my photos on their walls of the bands that I had on my wall. So like they'll have a Slayer photo on their wall that I took, and I had a Slayer photo on my wall growing up, and now they want to be a photographer. Like that is the coolest thing ever. But yeah, it was amazing. It's a bummer that literally none of those magazines exist anymore. It was 1 year they all went under. It was 2009 or 10, I believe. Literally all five of those magazines went under that year, which is such a bummer. But yeah, it was so cool because I got a Metal Maniacs cover, which was amazing. That was like the magazine. It's such a bummer that none of those magazines exist anymore. I mean, Hit Parader came back as an online store. It's not a magazine anymore. And it's like, why are you coming back to sell, like, be a third-party seller of Funko and vinyl and T-shirts and stuff? Like, bring the magazine back. I brought a magazine back. You guys can bring a magazine back. Let's do it. Like, make it happen.
Yeah, that's what Rockabilia is for, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what they are. Which is like, I would love to see Hit Parader come back as a print magazine. It would be so incredible.
I have visions of taking a kitty. This was like in 2002, 2003. The centerpiece of the magazine was a kitty poster. We hung that up in the hallway at school. We just plastered the school with it. It was like a vivid memory. Like those are so important to us growing up, those mags.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's why we made the change in Outburn magazine, the magazine where I'm the editor-in-chief, where we now have at least 5 to 10 full page photos that are just like pull out posters in every issue now. Had to bring that back. That's like such a big part of magazines.
Totally.
Being able to cut out that photo and put it on the wall. Or even worse, when you had to buy 2 copies because there was one photo on both sides and you needed both of them,
That's Nate again.
Yeah.
I never read the articles. I just bought it for the photos.
Well, we picked those Tuan and I lugged those friggin' totes full of magazines up and down at camp this summer so that we could do that episode. We're pulling stuff out. We're pulling posters out. One of Queens of the Stone Age with Trent Reznor on the other side. It's like, yeah, I wanted 2 of those. I wanted to put up both of those bands.
Exactly.
Yep. 3 years, a 3-year subscription to Kerrang magazine, just nonstop, amazing. We call it nerdery. Just photos you wouldn't see otherwise,
Mm-hmm. And those were weekly, so you'd get a lot of those.
Yeah.
Men's Health 18 with Blink 182 on the cover, that type of stuff.
Oh man, I did a Teen Beat photo shoot at one point for it was Hawthorne Heights, But it was just
Nice.
funny to. Oh, and I did a Good Charlotte one too for them. But it was funny shooting for one of those teeny bopper magazines when they used to cover like alternative kind of stuff.
That's amazing.
I love the range. And like, do you listen to that stuff too?
Oh, I love Good Charlotte.
Right on. Yeah.
Hawthorne Heights was okay. I liked that one album. If Only They Were Lonely, I think. Well, that song was on the album. I forget if that's the name
The
of the album.
Silence in Black and White.
No, it's the one with the blue cover.
Oh, okay. That was the one after that. Yep.
But yeah, for that era when I was working mostly for like Victory, Trustkill, and Ferret, I loved all those bands because it's what you're surrounded with. It's what you see. Like there's some years where I saw 18 Visions or Bleeding Through or Walls of Jericho maybe like 6 times a year, or even better, toured with them for 30 days and got to see them for like 30, 40 days in a row. You start to really like those bands if you don't already. It kind of just happens. But yeah, pretty much most of the bands I shoot, I listen to for the most part. Every now and again, there's a band where it's like, I'll shoot them live, and I have no idea what they sound like. There's a few out there that are like that.
So when you're shooting a band, like, for promotion, are you going to them? Or are they coming to you? Like, what's a day like? Do you come in with a vision? Do they provide the vision? I'm so intrigued by this.
Every shoot is completely different. Sometimes it's a member of the band hitting me up. Sometimes it's a magazine giving me an assignment. Sometimes it's me giving myself an assignment for a magazine. Sometimes it's an endorsement company, like a guitar company, a guitar pick company, whatever, a management company. It's always different. And then in terms of ideas, sometimes it's just like, all right, you got 30 minutes, do a photo shoot. And you come up with something and you have kind of an idea going into it. And then sometimes it's like, okay, here's the specific vision of what I want you to do photo wise, and you collaborate on it and make it, what it is. And other times you have to go to them with the idea, like, here's what I want to do, here's what we're doing. And it all depends on the context of the shoot, what it's for, if it's for them, if it's for a magazine, if it's for, something else. That kind of, funnels it into what type of shoot it's going to be and who kind of calls the shots or, directs it and whatnot. So it's always different.
And with that is also like costume design, everything is under your control, or is it kind of a collaboration?
Usually there's not much in terms of wardrobe. I mean, like say you're shooting Gwar, they're going to come up as Gwar. If you're shooting whatever band, they're probably going to show up in their stage outfits because that's what's most, makes the most sense. But if you're doing like a campaign shoot, like you're shooting essentially what is supposed to last 2 years for a band, where you shoot, the album photos, their endorsement photos, their product photos, their, everything that they use for exclusives for every different magazine. And you have all the different changes. Some bands don't change it's like, this is what we wear for everything. Just change the lighting, change the set, change the background, change that way. And I still do that regardless of clothing changes, but like, wardrobe wise, it's usually just wear what makes sense, what fits the band mostly. There's very few instances where, younger bands who wanted input, I would say just, stay cohesive, get things that make sense. Don't have a band that looks like you're 5 different people that randomly met and decided to hang out together for one night because you thought it would be funny. Don't be the Breakfast Club. Be
that makes sense. Yeah.
Be a band that looks like a band. Be a band that looks like a unit. Don't have sandals, shorts, V-neck guy, and then like jacket, long pants, Ugg boots guy, and then guy with bullet belt and corpse paint. Be cohesive.
That makes sense. It's interesting to think. Obviously, you deal with a lot of established bands that know what they're going to be and what they're going to do, but then you do have some of those other bands that are coming up and they want a little guidance, but they just don't know where to start. Like we've talked to a couple on both ends of the spectrum on this podcast, and you can tell the ones that have been through a million interviews, and this is another one, and they're engaging and having fun with it, but you can tell the ones that are like, we've never done this before. This is exciting. Like, what do I answer? How do I answer that question? I'm not even sure. Same idea, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you think about it, a photographer, if they're going to a photographer, they're trusting that photographer to kind of help curate their visual legacy within a certain spectrum of time. Like, if a band's coming to me again and again and again, like say a band like In This Moment, I've done their photos for all of their official photos for maybe 6 or 7, 8 years now, something like that. And they keep coming back to me because Maria will say, like, I have this idea. How can we do this and make it? How can you Saffer it? And we kind of collaborate together, and it's really it's not too difficult. She pushes me to like learn new stuff and go beyond my abilities a lot, which is great. But it's a lot of us working together, collaborating, bringing her visions to life, but also kind of maintaining their visual legacy while building upon it and curating it and kind of, shaping that visual legacy. And, I'd like to think a lot of bands do change their visual look over the years, for sure. Some don't, but I would like to think those shoots that have a big impact, like the My Chemical Romance, Three Cheers era photo shoot I did. I would say that's one of those photo shoots that helped shape their visual legacy. Not that they didn't already look like that, but those photos are so iconic to what they look like at that time. And I think I have that with a lot of bands, which is really cool. And I think when you go to a photographer and you want them to do your photos and you want them to kind of create with you, you're looking for someone to kind of freeze frame your visual legacy there and build upon it,
You said Saffer it. Like, what is that besides like you just said relationships? Like, what is it? Is it lighting? Is it editing? Like, I want to get in that brain, Jeremy. Like, what is Safferizing? I just made that up.
So yeah, she probably did too. She would look at my photos of other bands and she would say, I want to look like that, but I don't want to be them. I want to be us, and that's why bands come to me. They come to me because they see my work with other bands, with other artists, and they're like, we want that, but for us. We want it, curated to our band so it makes sense within what our world is rather than what their world is, what we really like what you did here. So it could be lighting, it could be posing, it could be editing. I don't do a lot of editing. I hate editing. It's the bane of my existence. I hate it so much. But I came from a school of I started on film. So it's all about like getting it right in camera so you don't have to edit. Learn how to do like you see something that looks absolutely insane, learn how to do it with lighting rather than learning how to do it with Photoshop, and you don't have to spend all that time editing it to look a certain way when you could just light it to look that way. It's really I've had so many situations where you take a picture of a band, right? You show them the back of camera and they're so impressed that they get so stoked on the photo shoot. Like last week I was doing a photo shoot with a band for a magazine. It was a quick little photo shoot. I took 3 test shots and said, this is what it's going to look like. And they had a little 2-second powwow, not in English, in Swedish. And they're like, can we hire you today to do our new photos? That's amazing.
That's rad.
And I'm like, and that's happened maybe 6, 8 times this year where I'm doing the photo shoot for something else. The band sees the back of camera. They see how I direct a band because that's also a very, very big thing that I get a lot of feedback about. And they hire me on the spot to do their new photos.
That's awesome.
Or I do one photo shoot with them for a magazine. They see the outcome or how I shoot, and they're like, listen, we're going to be back in 2 months. We need to hire you to do our photos. And that happened with Guar, that happened with Soin, that happened with Nightwish, that happened with Catatonia just this year alone. And it keeps on happening, which is awesome. Best feedback you could possibly get.
and that's, I mean, that's a tribute to you. I mean, you obviously know what you're doing behind the camera. You obviously know what you're doing when you're setting, sets up, shots up to make bands look good. And you do. I mean, again, go to the website, click on that. It's in the show notes right now. There's some fucking badass photos there. And you can buy some too, right? Prints?
Oh yeah. Yep. We got a store, and anytime I do prints, it's always split with the band. So it puts some money in the artist's pocket, especially when they're not on tour, which is awesome, supporting the band you like.
Well, it's funny at Tattoo the Earth, like we said earlier, like you were upstairs Palladium in the balcony. And I remember I had run over to Brandon Chipetti and I was like, hey, we're the podcasts for the festival. You want to come chat? He's like, yeah, I just got to do some photos and then I'll be right with you. So we kind of tailed him. And dude, I was blown away when you were photographing. We were up there when you were photographing Bleeding Through, and like you had some smoke and stuff. And I was like, holy shit, this is mind-boggling. It was amazing to see in person what goes into it.
Thanks, man. I mean, that was the most simple setup I think I did all year because I was running from one fest to the next. But I love Bleeding Through. I've been doing their photos for, I don't know, 15 years at least, something like that, since This Is Love era. One of my first photo shoots, the first 3 photo shoots I did in my career, first 5 actually, I can tell you, were first one was Lacuna Coil, second was Slayer, third was Bleeding Through, fourth was A Life Once Lost, and fifth was
Nice.
A Perfect Murder. Just remembering those top 5 off my head. But yeah, Bleeding Through has been with me since essentially the foundation of my career. So it's always awesome when we cross paths. Of course, like the lineup's completely different now, but seeing the dudes that I saw when I was just a little kid, and they would just, they would crash at my house because, that's how it was back in the day. It's like, hey, and anybody at the show got a house for us to crash at. So like my house always
Right on,
had like, Walls of Jericho, Bleeding Through, 18V, those kind of bands just crash. A Day to Remember, those bands like crashing the couches, and then we would do a photo shoot the next day kind of thing. So yeah, it's always cool getting to cross paths with them, and they're actually coming back in January, so I'm pretty pumped about that, to the Palladium.
Are you going to be at that one with God Forbid?
I am Bleeding Through is there. I'm not missing it.
Hell yeah, man.
And God Forbid's back.
Road trip.
That's gonna be awesome.
Road trip.
Well, I haven't seen Bleeding Through upstairs. I saw him headline the Derek Hess tour, the Stress tour, but I never saw them upstairs. I want to see it.
Last time I saw them upstairs, I think, was 2004, and it was that day we did that first photo shoot. Or no, I saw them before that, but they played downstairs at Metal Fest. The upstairs show was them, A Life Once Lost, and A Perfect Murder, which is why those 3 photo shoots happened.
Right on.
But yeah, that was a good tour. They're great on a small stage, and they're great on a big stage.
If we lived in the same state, we would have been friends for the last 20 years.
Well, I'm sure we were at so many of the same shows because I was at any hardcore metal Palladium show.
Yeah, we were there.
Awesome.
So you just gave us your first 5 there of Slayer, Lacuna Coil. You get the call to do anything like that. Are you, early on, are you at all starstruck, or are you just like, nope, I know what I'm doing. I got this. I'm jumping in. I'm taking photos. I'm not worried about who it is. I'll figure that stuff out after.
So Lacuna Coil happened before I knew anything about photography. That was shot on auto in the basement of the Webster Theater in Hartford, not knowing anything about photography. You got to understand, I went from disposable cameras to a digital camera, shooting on full auto, not knowing anything about ISO, f-stop, shutter speed, any of that stuff. I didn't know what it was. But I shot a show with my mom's old Canon AE1 on film, and it was the New England Metal and Hardcore Fest, and a lot of the photos came out pretty bad. I shot it on that and a digital, so I had both. And when I saw the film not coming out that great, the person who worked at I don't know if you remember the Fuji camera stores that they used to have back in the day. They have one at my local mall. The person working there is like, okay, listen, this is what your ISO is. This is what a shutter speed is. This is what an f-stop is. And they took like literally a couple hours out of their day behind the counter to teach me photography. And I kind of learned from there, but I was still shooting on auto for a while before I went to Hallmark. The Lacuna Coil shoot was pre-Hallmark. Slayer, Bleeding Through, A Life Once Lost, Perfect Murder were all during Hallmark. So that was while I was at school learning it. So I was kind of learning as I went. The Lacuna Coil one was just like available lighting, whereas Slayer, Bleeding Through were with, strobes, big soft boxes and stuff like that. And that's how I started learning with those kind of shoots. But how awesome is it to learn photography by shooting Slayer and shooting,
exactly,
Bleeding Through and stuff like that.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Best internship going.
Yeah, but that's a testament to the bands. Like Slayer was for an assignment. It was for a magazine. But Bleeding Through was me, this little kid, going up to, Brandon and being like, hey, I really like Bleeding Through. I have lights with me. Is it cool if we do a quick photo shoot before you guys go on? And doing, hell yeah, let's do it. And, experimenting and learning the lights while shooting, because that's the best way to learn, by shooting. Obviously you don't always have those kind of bands at your disposal, and that doesn't exist anymore. That world doesn't exist. Like the bands at that level that are open to those things are kind of like not there anymore. There's either the middle kind of dissipated, and you either have the really, really small or the really, really big. which is kind of an interesting thing to see that happened in the music industry, especially after the pandemic.
Yep.
Bands are either, massive or little, and there's very little in the middle nowadays, which is weird.
We talked about that the summer of 2020 when we were kind of waiting for stuff to come back. And then we talked about it again fairly recently with a local musician a friend of ours who just got back off a tour. He's kind of in that middle class and it's shrinking. And we were like, what's it like going out on tour, man? Like you got to rent a van and find support and all that stuff and do it all on your own. And we're worried about that middle class because it's a huge part of music. Like we need those people. Like they need to continue to be people going from the small to the middle to the big, and not just there's a small class and they're playing those tiny shows locally, and then you've got Slayer or you've got Metallica. We need more than that.
Yeah, I mean, local scenes need to pop up more and be more, supportive. I'm sure they exist elsewhere, but the Western Mass scene doesn't exist anymore, and it was one of the biggest scenes in the music industry for, over a decade. It just isn't here anymore, which is sad, but it's true. All those bands either grew up and out to be All That Remains and Shadows Fall and all that kind of stuff, or they just didn't, and they're gone. They don't exist anymore.
True. How do you stay motivated? Like, because you've scaled the highest mountain, you've done the Slayer, but like, how do you? I don't know. Like, are you still impressed by your work? I just feel like you've seen it all, done it all, and like you're kind of this visionary. And like, where else do you go? I feel like you've. I don't know. I'm just so fascinated by it.
I think it's difficult to look at things one shoot at a time. I think it's difficult to be impressed with what you do one shoot at a time. I think when you look back at a body of work, like a year's worth of work, or you look at like a compilation of photo shoots or, 5-10 years worth of work, you're like, wow, I actually did stuff. I think every shoot, you don't really have time to think about it because you're doing the shoot, you're editing it, you're getting it off, you're doing the next shoot, you're editing it, you're getting it off to where it needs to go, you're sending it to the magazine, to the band, to whatever. You're not really you're stoked on what you got, you're pumped, you put it out there, you promote it, you're stoked on the photo, but you're just constantly moving and not really like letting it soak in. And I think things like books, like magazines, like collections, like when you see today we dropped the 100th issue of Outburn, and I definitely had a couple happy tears because I've been with them since 2005. The magazine went under, we brought it back, and seeing 100 issues in the magazine because they printed every cover in there, and it's like, wow, this is my 30-something cover with Outburn. Look at how far we've come. Look at how many of these bands don't exist anymore. Look at how much better the photography is now than then, and look at how how much work is in here. It's cool to see those bodies of work kind of collected and to take the time to look at your body of work rather than look at just the next shoot. It's okay to look back. A lot of people are like, don't look back, just keep moving forward. And it's like, nah, it's okay to look back for sure.
That is great advice to anybody grinding something out. Like, absolutely look back and say, okay, look where we were when we started. Look where we were maybe 6 months in. And then look where you are today. Wow. Like, you've gotten better at it. Like, keep doing it. You're good.
Yeah, I would be out of a job if I wasn't getting any better. And I think the pandemic definitely helped with that a lot, for sure.
Well, it's also one of the few careers where you can gain experience on the job instead of it being a job title. Hey, you need experience to even be in the interview process. But this is one of the few careers where you can gain experience on the job organically. I can't think of any other career where that is even remotely possible.
Oh, guitar tech, drum tech, tour manager, any job on tour, sound person, music engineer. I could go on forever on jobs where you can get experience by doing, but the problem is to get in. There's a very, very, very high wall to get over to get in. Once you're in, you can kind of roll that and grow, but it's very hard to. And I see so many photographers kind of trying to get over that wall, and some make it, some don't. But once you're in, you can really make things happen. I was lucky that I started with some bands that ended up getting really big. Like, as MySpace was blowing up, there was my photos of My Chemical Romance, my photos of Avenged, my photos of 18V were their profile photos and my credit under them, and that really helped and every few years there's a wave of new bands that are getting bigger and blowing up at the time with, your name under it. And that's what really helps propel you to the next level of your career as well. But yeah, absolutely. It's awesome getting to learn by doing.
That's a good point too. And something worth noting, the fact that it's a trust. There's a trust there. Like, it's almost like getting a tattoo. You were talking about Maria Brink with In This Moment. It's like she wanted you because she saw something she saw somewhere else. Ultimately, a tattoo is a representation of you as a personality, and same with the photo shoots and how you want that vision to, the outcome of that photo shoot to look. So there's a lot of parallels there with the tattoo side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, sometimes you got to think of photo shoots just a photo shoot. It's something that a band does for 20 minutes because they want to be in a magazine, or they're asked to be in a magazine and they have to do it for the feature to exist. And then other times it's so much more important because it's for their art, it's for their album, it's for something really important. Or like I also shoot music videos, or creating a music video for an artist. It's much more important than a 20-minute photo shoot, but it's everything in between too. So some are definitely very, very important, very personal, very, sought after for this person to do this thing. Other times it's, here's the photographer, here's the band, go,
What's the pivot for you to like move to like 3D? And what I mean by that is video. Like, you've done music videos, you've directed, photos is one thing, but to make it 3D, like, how does that even happen?
Maria,
it was her. Yeah.
It was her fault. Yep. We were doing a photo shoot at my studio. She doesn't live too far from where I am, so it's not too rough for me to go to her to come to me. And she was like, "Oh, so while we're doing the photo shoot, we're just gonna shoot a music video real quick for the song
Really?
The Fighter." And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Oh, honey, you'll figure it out. It's fine. She's the sweetest person ever. Like, when I did the cover for Black Widow, she's like, I want it to look like Sin City. I want it to have rain. I want, this, and this. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. She's like, oh, you'll figure it out. It's fine. And
It's that
I
trust.
do.
It's that trust.
It is. It's knowing that every time we do something big, she says, this is what you need to learn to do it. And I know you can because you've done it every single time I task you with learning something new. And I did. We did. And then, once I shot that video and it did really, really well. I mean, it was so simple. It was like a ring light or two lights and me like unfocusing and focusing with a camera. It was pretty simple, but that's still my favorite music video I've shot so far because it was just her, me, and lights. That's it. And I've been on video shoots where it's, like a production of, 100 people, lighting person, camera people, multiple camera people, hair, makeup, all this, big to do. Just, her and I, and that's it. And the last video we shot for In This Moment actually was just her partner Joe, me, my partner Tara. That was it. That was who was on set. Simple and easy.
Wow.
Yeah. Is some of that you've got the 100 people. Obviously, there's places and labels and areas where that money kind of gets flown, pushed into, and that's why you get all that. But like, as you said, you could do it with 3 or 4 or 5 people. Some of that's got to be technology, but some of that's just you grind it out, you figure it out yourself, and do it yourself, DIY.
It's the level of what's going into the video, just like what's going into a photo shoot. Like, okay, do we need extras? Do we need, do we have a full band and we're doing this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene with different looks every scene and different locations every scene? Or are we shooting you in a bathtub full of milk from overhead and it's just you and I, and we're doing a few takes of that and then a few takes of you wearing a mask against a black background? We don't need all these other people for that. We just need us. And it's also a comfort thing. I think it's kind of stressful for artists to be surrounded by, it's either easier or more difficult. It's more difficult in that they don't have, hey, go do this. Okay, they have 10 people who can go do this. But it's so much easier when it's just 2 people communicating and that's it. You don't have all these other cooks in the kitchen, all these other things. Wait, let me fix this. Wait, let me fix this. Wait, let me do this. Wait, let me change this. Which happens on big sets. Which I anytime I do a photo shoot, it's usually not a big set. It's usually pretty much me, an assistant or 2, the band, maybe hair and makeup, and that's it. Very rarely hair and makeup, usually for big shoots only. But small sets kind of are easier to control and easier to contain and more comfortable, less stress.
you might have just answered my question, but what's your preference? The big one with all the help or the smaller set with...
Well, it depends on what the shoot is. Again, like if the shoot's a big shoot with a lot of extras and you have makeup and special effects and blood and all sorts of stuff, the more people, the better, because it'll get done quicker and the shoot won't last 16 hours. That's very important. But if it's just a simple shoot of me and a band, I'd rather have it be more, organic. Like, hey, it's just us. Let's do this. There's no reason to have the multiple other people. Always have an assistant, but beyond that.
How do you know you're done? Like, how do you know that where it's like, that's the shot, that's the one, both photog and visuals with the music videos?
So music videos, you kind of have a list of what you need to shoot, and it is what it is. In terms of photo shoots, and to be fair, I've only shot like a handful of music videos. That's not my main thing at all. Like, I haven't done one since the pandemic, which was the one thing I shot during the pandemic, which was the In This Moment video. So it's definitely not something I shoot enough to have a lot of commentary on. But in terms of photo shoots, there are photo shoots where you have all the time in the world. You can shoot whatever you want. You have the whole day or you have 2 days, and you kind of feel it. That like that dramatic comedic, the energy has left the room. The photo shoot is over. That happens. That is an actual thing. You feel it. You feel it when you got what you needed. Everyone's excited about what you got, and anything you shoot beyond that is either not necessary or like you're just tired and you're done and you hit that wall and it's time to eat some pizza and celebrate that the photo shoot's over. But a lot of other times it's you have 5 minutes with this band or you have 2 minutes with this band, go, and your time is, and that shoot is over at 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Yeah. Is that what it was like at Tattoo the Earth? It was just like they're coming in, they're taking pictures, and they're out.
I'm usually very quick as a photographer because I'm very used to having to do quick shoots. So if I'm given 5 minutes, I'm going to get it done in 3. But I didn't really have a time constraint with those guys other than like, hey, we're playing at this time, but I didn't need to get a lot of stuff because it was a one shot for a magazine and it was quick and easy to get.
Nice.
It also depends on what you need out of the shoot. If you just need one shot for a magazine, you don't need more than 5 to 10 minutes. If you need to do a full feature spread, you might need a half hour. If you're doing a cover or multiple covers, you probably need, half a day or a day. And if you're doing a full campaign, definitely a day. So it definitely depends on what the output needs to be.
Interesting. Yeah. That's something that just your common fan and even us before just now, doing this podcast wouldn't have thought to ask the question, but I'm so glad that we get to dig into these things because I don't know where else I would get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, every single shoot is completely different. Very rarely are any shoots similar or the same.
What's the craziest thing that's happened on a set? Like something, natural disaster, or someone got sick or anything like that?
I mean, I've had all sorts of things happen on a photo shoot. I've had someone so drunk they threw up or fell over or passed out.
Jeez.
I've had someone poop in my studio, not an animal, like a human.
Wow.
Yeah, they're in government now, so that's a thing. Not the dude from Most Precious Blood. No, he's good people. It was someone else on that label in a different band who pooped in my studio for some reason.
Was it Justin, not him?
It wasn't Justin. Justin's good people. I didn't want people to hear that and think like, what did Justin do? But it was somebody else. It was not Justin. But yeah, I've had all sorts of I've had people walk out of photo shoots. I've had that happen because they were having a bad day or something and they just walked out, or the photo shoot doesn't happen for one reason or another. I set up my lights, we're ready to go. Photo shoot doesn't happen. I don't think I've had like a fight happen at a shoot or anything like that. But yeah, I think those are the craziest things. So it's not that crazy. It's kind of boring.
We haven't had anybody drunk yet. I don't think anybody's pooped. But we have had people we've set up, we're ready to go. We've got all our notes and no show. So that has happened before. I can feel that. I understand that feeling.
See, for me, it's different because I'm at the show. I'm in the venue. Right. They're there. And it's like, homies, let's go. And the biggest bummer is like, the last time that happened, it was with someone who's not with us anymore. And it was last year, and it could have happened if I waited for it. And here was the tricky thing. I wanted to shoot it on the floor of a venue. They wanted to do it right before they went on. Right before they went on, there was nowhere for me to shoot because there was, nowhere where fans were not going to be. So I wasn't able to do it. And I was like, you know what? Let's just leave. Well, I'll get them next time. And sadly, there is never going to be a next time, which is such a huge bummer.
Jeremy, so another question, kind of random. Since you're around these artists that, you may or may not be starstruck, like you said, you fucking Slayer fan, now you're shooting Slayer, like crazy shit like that. But also being a photographer, from disposable cameras to where you are today. And then next thing you know, you're rubbing shoulders with people like Ross Halflin and, the ones that everyone knows, the rock photographer royalty. Do you ever get starstruck, or do you ever see yourself like, wow, this guy inspired what I do? I took some notes from this guy, and now I'm somewhat at this guy's level, if not better. Is there any of that going on? Or
so I'm weird in how I'm a photographer, in that I didn't grow up looking at other photographers. I grew up a musician. So I was looking at James Hetfield's solos. I was looking at Kirk solos. I was looking at like Alexi Leo solos. I was learning that. I did have one photographer's work on my wall that I knew, and it was Ross Halfin. That was the only photographer I knew. And in 10 years, the first, like, not first 10 years, but first like 5-6 years of photography, he was the only photographer whose name I knew. I didn't know who Annie Leibovitz was. I didn't know who Ansel Adams was. I knew Ross Halfin. That's it. When I was very new and just starting out, I reached out to him, and he was not the kindest person, but he's well known for that. He admits that. He says that if you get his Metallica book, either the forward or the back of the book is a letter someone wrote to him about how much of a dick he is. And he's like proud to be a dick and be a dick to people. Like, he takes pride in how awful he is to people. And it could be his sense of humor, it could be his way, but he was very not nice to me back then. And there was a situation that came up recently as well. So yeah, in that era, in rubbing shoulders with Ross and working with some of the same bands he works with, and him not being very happy about that for sure nowadays anyway. Yeah, no, but I did meet Neil Zalazar. I can't pronounce their last name, and I didn't know who they were. And then I saw Rockstar. I'm like, oh, it's the photographer from Rockstar. And then their work's legendary, and it's really cool. And like, now more so, I'm seeing work of photographers of my level or up and coming whose work I just think is incredible. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude, it's so awesome. Your work's amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Like, holy hell, it's amazing. And we're like mutual fans of each other's work. But in terms of photographers I grew up with, there weren't any. And photographers that inspire me, they're either dead or on a level where I'll never meet them anyway.
Wow.
They're doing stuff that's outside of my world, like David LaChapelle. He's one of my favorite photographers, and the stuff he does is nowhere near our world. But yeah, I'm definitely like, I see a lot of photographers out there and I see their work, but it's not the most famous photographers who have been doing it for 20 or 30 years. Mm-hmm. It's the people doing it now who do incredible work, and there's so many out there, and those are the names I know. My contemporaries who I think are incredible, and there's so many.
Toss a couple out. Who are you talking about?
Man, when I'm put on the spot, I'm the worst.
Me too, but I had to. Sorry.
I am I'm trying to think. Beatrice, she's a singer of a band as well. Beatrice Marino, she's an amazing photographer. Karen Jerzik, of course, is amazing. She was a photographer who shoot shows back in the day with us. Yeah, there's a lot of up and coming photographers who are really good. Black Rabbit, he does a lot of the creepy shoots with Missy, who does the custom art for like King Diamond, Merciful Fate, Cradle of Filth, Ice Nine Kills, Motionless in White. The photographer that she works with a lot, he's amazing. But yeah, there's so many out there where I just nerd out on their photography. It's always cool when you see a photo and you can't figure out how it was done. That's what does it for me in music, and in photography. When you see something and you're just like, how the hell does this exist? What did they do to make this? Rather than something where you're like, oh, okay, they took one light and did this and this. That stuff doesn't impress me as much as, unless it's like technically insane, like the Lindsay Adler stuff, which is, incredible. But seeing stuff where I don't know how it was done and I can't figure it out and I don't know how to recreate it, that's the stuff that really impresses me. And then same thing with music, when you're hearing these bands when it's like, all right, this band sounds like 77 other bands that sound exactly the same versus a band that sounds like I listen to a lot of Zealand Ardor. That band's incredible and they sound like no other band that exists. I did a lot of years touring with I Wrestled a Bear once, and they were a band that sounded like no other band out
True.
there.
Yeah.
I love hearing those bands that sound like nothing else out there. Ghost, they're another band that came out and they're like, no one else is doing this. And that's what propelled them to where they are. Ice Nine Kills right now, they definitely sound like some other bands, but no one's mixing sound the way they are. No one's mixing the metal and the massive choruses the way they are. So it's like, damn, that new album's killer. So
Well, it's one thing for us to have that mentality, because that happens a lot. Like we're a bunch of hacks, but to have you look at art and acknowledge that, like, that's impressive. That's the cream of the crop.
well, I think that's what impresses everybody who's in what they do. When you do something and you are kind of like in it and you're doing it every day and you see someone doing the same thing as you, but you can't figure out how they did it because it's so awesome and it blows your mind. You're just like, dang, I need to watch their work. This is incredible. It really impresses you. And I've heard that in a lot of I'm a big movie nerd. Seeing director interviews where they saw a movie and they're like, how did they do this? How did they light this? Oh my God, what an incredible shot. How did you even get that shot? How does that shot exist? And I see that in movies all the time. I'll be watching a movie and see a scene, and it's like, how do I transpose this scene in a movie to photography? How do I put a band here in this scene that I'm looking at? How do I recreate it? And if it's something I can't even come close to figuring out, it's just so impressive. And it's really cool to see, a breakdown of that. And that's why I do breakdowns of everything I do. Like I'll post a photo, I'll post a behind the scenes, show where the lights are, the light settings, the camera settings, a behind the scenes video as well, and just a full breakdown of all the settings I use. So if you want to recreate anything I did, that's how I did it. Now you know how to do it. And I would
Wow.
love to see that with so many other, creatives out there. It's such an awesome thing.
Open source.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
special kind of nerdery, and that's the type of shit that we love. So yeah, that's awesome. Wow.
Absolutely.
You've got a gallery coming up in LA in February, correct?
Yeah. Daughters of Darkness. It's a book I put out 2 years ago during the pandemic. And because it came out during the pandemic, we never had a gallery show. We never had a book signing. It just came out, which was awesome. But it'll be great to finally have a gallery show. But what we're doing for it to make it more interesting is we're doing photo shoots that aren't in the book, photo shoots that have happened since the book came out as well. So it'll be really cool to do that and actually do an in-person signing finally.
Nice. Yeah, where's that all going to be if anybody's out in the West Coast and wants to get to it?
Exhibit A Gallery, which is owned by Richard Villa III, who does like a lot of artwork for Black Veil. He did that big Metallica art show, which was awesome. Amazing artist. We did a collab print as well, which is his work over my work, which we've posted, and he's doing prints of those for the gallery show, which will be fun. A lot of the models who are in the book are going to be there, and some other guests and whatnot, special guests and surprises. So it's going to be really fun.
Nice. This is in Los Angeles, I take it?
Yep. Los Angeles,
Nice.
Exhibit A Gallery.
Jeremy, we were talking last night that, like, we think, and I'd like to get your perspective on it, we think this is the best era for someone like you to live in with your skill set, because print is still hanging on. There's digital, but then, like, we know you have a Patreon, right? And that you're doing seminars. Like, I can't think of any era where you could showcase what you do than like this era.
I think if I knew what I knew now and could do what I do now 20 years ago, that's where it would be the best. Because if you look at, and you guys are still going to shows, like the difference between how many photographers you saw at a show in a photo pit back then versus what you see now, there's 10 times as many.
Yeah.
There are way more photographers out there. Not that anyone should be competitive. That's not a way to be. Don't be competitive. Everyone's there for a different reason. But like in terms of, okay, there's these, and you name them by name. There's Karen, there is Aaron, there is Dan, there is Rob, there is Jeremy, there is, Chuck, there is Todd. There are those photographers, you know who they are. Do you know any of the photographers in the pit now?
No.
So like very different era because there's so many out there. There's just countless photographers. Anyone can get a camera very easily, get photo passes, and shoot shows, which is awesome. It's amazing seeing so many creatives out there doing their thing, getting into it. I love it. It's awesome, but it's also, people are kind of spread thin in terms of content. You go to any show and there's 40 photographers, and everybody in the audience who took pictures on their cell phones posting video footage and photos. You don't have exclusive photos anymore that get all the eyes,
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah. So with like, you go to you're sometimes better off not shooting the show, getting a ticket, going in with not a disposable camera, like a point and shoot or your cell phone, and you'll get better content as a fan with a ticket up close than you will being a photographer with a photo pass, which is not a bad thing. It's just technology has gotten there. It took a long time for it to get there, and it's only going to get better. But we're in an era where anyone can get the content that you would normally exclusively get.
Yeah, that's a good point. The fan perspective also, but one thing you just said that kind of got me thinking, that like mob of photographers, are a lot of those on retainer for like Rolling Stone and Spin and are exclusive to that, or is it always kind of free?
Spin doesn't exist anymore.
That's true.
They went out of print. I believe they're online only now, and Rolling Stone doesn't really cover what we like,
Yep.
They very rarely cover music for the most part. They're very much just pop culture, which is fine. The dream was like to get the photo on the cover of Rolling Stone when they were a music magazine. They're never gonna cover anything I shoot. That's for dang sure.
Or get on MTV, which also.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's a different era. So it's very easy for anyone to make a www.metalsite.com and shoot for that metal site. There's a lot of people who do that. That's how I started. I started chaosmetal.com, and that's how I got into shows at first, having a webzine. And I'd say a lot of them are on webzines. A lot of them are shooting on assignment for, online and print mags, and everyone's in there for a reason. Some are friends with the band and got a photo pass. Some are shooting for ESP or, Tama, or especially in Boston where, Vic Firth, Zildjian, that's all out of Boston. They're all shooting for different reasons. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Like I saw online, this is the first time I've ever heard of it, where someone filming the show had to pay a venue per camera, which I think that lends itself to exactly what you're talking about, where it's so saturated that there's such a demand for it that they need to create a barrier to entry.
Well, that was Hate 5-6, and that was that's a different situation of a venue being disingenuous to him, I think.
So that's an exception, not the rule. Yeah.
Yes, I think that was a venue being kind of disingenuous to him and being pretty awful to him. But again, I'm not video guy, I'm photo guy. I can say that a photographer does not have to pay to shoot a show. As far as I know, I've never dealt with that. I've shot all over the world. I've toured with bands. I've never seen anything like that, but I have seen filming restrictions. Different venues don't allow it at all. Not allowed. You cannot film video. Others, there is some sort of fee you have to pay for using. It's not per camera usually. I would say it's just like, here's the flat fee to shoot here. So because you're using our stage and our visuals or whatever else. But that being said, I don't know too much about that world, as I'm a photo guy more than video guy.
Yeah,
I think we hit everything. Yeah,
I think the only thing is, and Jeremy, it's how much you want to let out of the bag. Like you have a new book coming out, right? Do you want to like tease anything like that? We want to put you on.
Yeah. So the next book I'm working on is a music photography book. So it's not just going to be photos. It's going to be the story behind the shoot, how I met the band, how the shoot came to be, collaborating with them. And then it's also going to have the band's perspective. So while I write like how we met, how we started working together, the behind the scenes photos, the photos you haven't seen before, and the final photos, it will also have someone like Maria or Christina or Simone or Tobias and whoever else writing what their experience was with the photo shoot and with working with me. So it's going to be a really cool thing.
All good things, of course.
Oh yeah, hopefully. There's definitely going to be some stuff in there where things didn't go right, that I can put in there. And I'm interested to see like when I hit that artist with like, hey, so we're good now, but remember when this happened? I'm putting this in the book. Are you okay with it? And see how that goes. Because there is a little bit of that for sure. But I want that in there. That's important to know that like not everything goes according to plan. Not everything goes smoothly. Sometimes you have to navigate when things go wrong and make them go right, or just walk away, or fix it if you can, or just leave it broken, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's something kind of celebrating 20 years as a photographer, which I hit next year technically.
Wow.
My first photo shoot was Lacuna Coil 2003. So I've been shooting live for many years up to that, but yeah, first photo shoot was them in 03. So next year's 20 years as a photographer, and it's insane to think 2003 was like 20 years ago. And it's like,
yeah,
I remember all those shows.
Does the book have a name?
It doesn't yet. It has a working title, but we're still figuring it out. I have a name I want it to be, but we'll see what happens with publisher and all that.
I'm thinking the Saffer effect.
Hell no.
Saffer.
No, the working title is All the World's a Stage, because I shoot everywhere.
Nice. That's rad.
Yeah, I'm hoping that will stick, but we'll see.
Nice. So, yeah, we've got that. You've got the Daughters of Darkness coming up in February. Got the seminars, got the Patreon. Go to jeremysaffer.com for all of that stuff. And, man, really appreciate talking with you tonight. This is... when we met you this summer, I thought it might be like this. I'm happy that it was, because this is exactly what we wanted. Like, it's just a great conversation about the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Right on. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate
Thank
this.
you.
It was awesome.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Podio Slave. We are at Podio Slave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podio Slave Podcast. YouTube, Podio Slave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.